If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In this episode, I am joined by Anna Hall, creator of the Purpose Equation. The Purpose Equation is an evidence-informed framework that guides people at all ages and stages of life to define and activate their unique, innate purpose in life and at work to age well. So, Anna, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Really excited to have you on today to discuss purpose. It's a subject I've always been interested in or long been interested in. It's a passion that I picked up from my dad, who wrote and spoke about purpose as a management consultant and a speaker. And so before we dive into our discussion on purpose, let's begin by having you tell the listener a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's truly an honor. And kudos to your dad, who was an innovator before his time, because purpose is now resurfacing as one of the key ways to engage our workforce and to retain our workforce. So yay for your dad. My story of purpose began about 25 years ago when I got my first job in senior living, a retirement community, assisted living, as an activity assistant. And there I met Francis and Evie and Wayne and Irving and Annette and residents who were the most exciting, intriguing people I had ever met. And they were in their 80s and 90s. Their authenticity really, really struck me as refreshing and fun and uplifting. And I thought, if I can figure out a way to turn this into a career and not just a job, then that's what I'm going to do. So here I am 25 years later, still working in and around senior living and the aging services space. And I developed the Purpose Equation. The Purpose Equation is an evidence-informed framework that helps people of all ages and stages in life really activate and bring their unique purpose to life every day. So now I help employees, teams, leaders, and companies to really retain and engage and develop their employees in this realm. Because frankly, development in alignment with purpose is the fastest way to grow humans. So I came to the equation because throughout my career, I was really lucky to be able to meet and interact and in many cases be mentored by what I now refer as my purpose guides. And they showed me what it looks like to live with purpose and what it looks like to have a disconnection. One of the people that made, I think, one of the most transformative impacts on me was named Alan. I met him before my senior living career began, but he led me there. When I met him, he was head of disability services at Boston University. Incredibly smart, dynamic, caring, empathetic. What a leader with a vision who advocated for people every single day is part of his life and part of his work. I met him because I was hired as his personal care assistant. So I would go to his home in the morning and help him with his bathing and dressing. I would suction his lungs because he was already, when I met him, he was about 35, about 5 years past his life expectancy, living with muscular dystrophy. So personal care, then I would go to work with him and see him in his purpose arena. And then we would, on the ride home, talk about constitutional law and have political debates. And, he would help me understand how to think about the law and precedent. And what an incredible person who was so strong, yet was forced to be so vulnerable with me in that personal care space. I know now, looking back, that Alan lived because he was so deeply connected with his purpose. I met another woman named Evie who was living with late stage Alzheimer's when I met her, when I was director of a memory care community. And Evie was a teacher. And I don't mean a teacher in terms of her role. I mean in terms of who she was as a being. She taught me about poetry. She had a love of learning that was literally contagious. We created programs and had poetry nights that were inspired by her. And despite her never, in the year and a half that I knew her, remembering my name, she became one of the most important people in my life because she, again, showed me what it looks like to live with a sense of purpose. And I would say thrive with joy and intrinsic motivation through one of the most challenging, progressive brain diseases that exists. She was a teacher until she took her last breath. So fast forward, 4 years ago, I dove into research to develop the purpose equation. And ever since then, I've been helping executives, people making midlife career changes. I've been teaching purpose classes at Ollie at Duke and helping individuals in college all connect with their unique innate ability to give and get meaning and joy every day. That's how I define purpose now.
Right. And why is purpose important?
Purpose is a matter of life. I'll pause there for people to take that in. There was a study done in 2009. It was a 4-year study and people 50 plus participated. And in that study, those who had a low connection with purpose score were 2 times more likely to die in that 4-year period. They mitigated for all other controls and things that could have been a cause. And it came down to sense of purpose is what gives us life. Other studies have been done that show people who are connected with their unique sense of purpose live up to 7 years longer, recover faster from illness and injury, have a greater mental health, a sense of hope and grit. People who are connected with their sense of purpose are less likely to have a stroke, to have cardiac illness and complications, and they're more likely to be socially engaged and dive into life despite chronic conditions and other things that could make us pull back. So I really think at its core, purpose is an adaptive tool that helps us live every day with health and wellness.
And what is purpose?
If you look it up in the dictionary, it will say, motivation or having a sense of direction in life. But I think that's pretty vague. And that could make us think that our purpose could be based on something that's outside of us, like a goal or a role. So I'm going to tell your listeners right now, your purpose is not what you are doing right now. It is not your title at work. It is not your job. It's not even being a grandparent or a mother or a sister. But what you do is connect with an innate sense of how you give and get meaning every day and channel that innate purpose that's internal to your external life. So when I say meaning and joy every day, where does meaning and joy come from? I'm not going to bore your listeners with the research, but it's based on things like theories of motivation, self-determination theory, basic psychological needs of humans, subjective well-being, personality theory, a lot of those different components I use to help people identify their purpose. But your purpose is not as simple as it's one thing, like a job. Your purpose is not as vague as I like to help people. A lot of people will say, oh, I know my purpose. I love to help people. And I'll say, well, if you want to understand your purpose, how do you help people? Why do you help people? What are the outcomes of the way that you help people? That gets deeper into what our purpose is. So when I help people define and activate their purpose, they need to understand their operating system. And like any operating system, there's different components that together create this system, this flow, this energy, and these outcomes. So your purpose is what you value. It's what brings you joy. It's what you've been doing for most of your life without trying or even awareness that gets you out of bed in the morning and brings you joy and helps other people. A lot of your purpose is based on how you think, how you learn, how you see the world, how you perceive relationships and interactions. And those things combined are what I call your purpose equation that really create the paradigm for how you uniquely as a human move through life and exchange energy with others.
Now, personally, I tend to differentiate between the general noun purpose, which is the small p, from what I consider one's more universal purpose. And I do that by using a capital P when I write purpose. And so how does one discover one's capital P purpose? And I think that's the purpose that you've been talking about.
Absolutely. Well, you got to look inside. You're not going to get answers by looking at, like I said, at goals or roles. Look inside for systems and patterns of ways that you feel excited about life, that you feel joy in life, ways that you interact and help others specifically that motivate you to keep going, even when times are hard. So our purpose is really our innate operating system that drives us through life. And that's why purpose is so important to be connected with and to define using words, because our brain thinks in words. And so if I have a purpose story, it's called narrative identity. So it's psychological theory, a story for myself about how I give and get joy. Like for me, part of my purpose components or operating system is that I deeply value learning. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm connected with my purpose, I think, what am I going to learn today? Who can I learn from? What can I learn about? How can I extend and deepen my knowledge base? Right. And that is whether that's talking to someone new like you, or connecting with my son who's 11 years old, or getting to know a colleague better. So that's an example, one component of my purpose that makes me excited to keep moving forward in life and to be engaged in life. So when I help people discover their purpose, we really create an equation of words that all intersect and empower us to move through life with this lens of curiosity and creativity and excitement about what's next.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. So elaborate a little bit more on what is this purpose equation you talk about?
So the purpose equation is a 6-step framework that I guide people of any age and any stage in life in to figure out what are the exact components of their purpose. So when I help guide people, I don't say help, I really guide people through this framework because of the way the framework is built and because it's evidence informed. The process or the experiences reveal purpose to the person. That's way more effective for a person to be guided to build their own equation than to take a survey like Myers-Briggs that kind of tells you who you are. You know, I'm a certified life coach, and one of the principles of coaching is that anytime you tell anyone anything, they're not going to absorb it. But when somebody is able to look inside and come to their own conclusions, then they're going to adopt that idea or that belief or reach that goal. So I always start with joy. I have a program called Joy Fuel And that helps people identify how they fuel their purpose with an internal energy that builds resilience. So we start with joy, and I give people a purpose prescription to joy fuel for the next 7 days. And it's incredible to see someone from the first time I meet them and then about 7 days later, their energy is always better. I can feel it through the Zoom screen. Joy fuel is the purpose equation's version of self-care, but it's a very intentional way to fuel energy and resilience. And humans don't get enough of that, especially in our society. We think that we need to burn ourselves out and push ourselves beyond the boundaries of our own energy in order to achieve or to be enough. But really, that doesn't work, right? When I'm trying to finish a project on an empty tank, it's going to take me 3 times longer than if I approach a project with full fuel. So we start with joy, then we look at values, we look at superpowers from positive psychology, we look at innate personality using Big Five, which is at least 40% genetic. So with that, I'll say people don't choose their purpose. We're born with a purpose, and it's our job to discover it. And then we look again at these patterns and systems that are a result of these evidence-informed components of our purpose, our values, our strengths, our personality, to define our operating system, our ways of being in all realms of life that fuel us from the inside. And then we can share that energy outwardly to engage in life.
Nice. And so it would seem that finding one's purpose isn't just this one-time life event. It's this culminating event. Oh, I found my purpose. It's more like a lifelong process. Would you say that?
Oh, yes. Yes. What I say to people when they discover their equation is this first purpose equation is now a platform for you to deeply understand how to engage in life, to stay in alignment, to improve your health and wellness and your engagement at work, your leadership skills. But this isn't the end. This is the beginning of what I call becoming. Purpose, the more you lean into it, the more you're aware of it, the more you live it and energize it and share it with intention, the more your purpose expands and grows. Humans are not stagnant beings. When we feel stagnant, it's because I think for most people, there's a disconnection from purpose happening that makes us stuck. So if you feel that your purpose is the same now as it was 20 years ago, I would challenge you to say, are there fears that are holding you back? Is there guilt that is holding you back? Do you have some internal blocks or challenges that might be holding you back from growing and learning and trying new things and being willing to fail and being able to adapt? Purpose expands. That's what it's here for.
Do you have a particular belief or postulate of where purpose comes from?
As close as I can get to that is I think about the golden spiral. You might have seen that this golden spiral pattern is present in tiny, tiny snails in their shell. It's the same pattern that you will find out millions of light years away in galaxies in the universe, this spiral pattern. So I think that purpose, again, is this same type of consistent pattern in all humans that we are born with. I believe that purpose is a survival tool. It's an evolutionary tool because humans are by nature social creatures and we need community to survive. Studies even show that loneliness and social isolation is more dangerous for health than smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. There have been studies on babies that show if they aren't loved and held and cared for, that they'll die. So humans, we need each other. But what is it that binds us together? I think that is purpose. Purpose is, again, how we give and get meaning and joy every day. And it's an energetic connection that is universally within all of us. So this pattern that I call purpose that drives us to keep going when the going gets tough, that allows us to feel joy even in the midst of suffering, that allows us to take a step forward even when we don't know what the next step after that is a tool we are born with to help us find meaning, make meaning, and learn and grow and be connected to make the best of this very short life that we have that goes by very quickly.
That's fascinating. And I have to kind of reflect on my own kind of evolution of my thoughts on purpose and all those types of things. As I said, I was kind of raised with a little bit more understanding of it, but there's been so many times in my life where I've had to kind of be in a situation where I feel like, why am I here? This is not going well, or, probably the most recent example is, struggles. We moved out to Oregon about 16 years ago. And there's been times where it's like, what am I doing here? Because we left family, left, a couple good jobs, and came out here, and like cuts in pay and all that type of stuff. And then you'd be sitting there and thinking, okay, well, why am I here? And there's been so many times that it's just registered for me. You're not here for you. Think of where your situation would be for your kids if you had not done these certain steps. My son just had his first MMA fight and won, which I'm so proud of. But, he would not be there if he had not, if we'd not been here, because he kind of went through this whole process of, he got into wrestling here because, it was connected with the right coaching, and, it's a big sport at the high school, and he had great support. One of his coaches, his sophomore year, was Chael Sonnen, who just got inducted into the Hall of Fame for the UFC. And, he's been a mentor for him. In fact, he texted him after it was after his fight, but he didn't know whether it was after the fight or not. He's just asking for an update. And here's a guy that's at UFC 300 getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, texting my son, asking him about him, how things are going. And it just blew me away. It's like, this is why, we're here. It's not always about me. It's about how I'm interacting with the universe. And I feel like if you feel like this purpose connects with the whole philosophy of like 6 degrees of separation, but I feel like everything that we do may not have a direct impact on us or even the person we're interacting with, but it's going to have a ripple effect down the road where it's affecting far more people than we really recognize and having far more impact on the universe than we really think we are. Would that kind of fit within your philosophy of purpose?
Absolutely. I do want to emphasize that I think purpose, first and foremost, is a survival tool for the individual. And that when that individual is then connected with their purpose, they have more purpose to share out into the world. It starts with, why do you get up in the morning? How do you put one foot in the front of the other when you don't know what's next, which is what you described? So for you, I would say, what is it about being a dad that lights you up?
Well, I don't know. I think it comes down to kind of, again, my perception of my purpose is not so much me, but the impact that I can have on the world. I mean, one of my values is having a positive impact on others. It goes into kind of some of my daily mantras. It goes into my mission statement and those types of things. And so, as a college professor, even doing this podcast, even, being a parent, it's less about, and it just took me a long time to kind of figure out that it was less about kind of my own personal success, but rather about the impact that I could have on the world. And that's another thing I think I picked up from my dad is that, for years, I had no intention of getting so heartfelt and all this stuff in the podcast today. I wanted to kind of listen to you, but
a
number of years ago, that's true. But, my dad is one of these guys, or was one of these guys who just passed away in January. And that's why I feel like I got to dedicate this particular episode to him. But he is not by some of the world's standards, you would not consider him successful. He didn't make a lot of money at what he did, but he impacted a lot of people. I mean, here is a person who never graduated college until he was well into his 50s. He went back to school and got his degree. But prior to that, I mean, he had been providing advice and, guidance to heads of corporations like Ford, US Steel, and all these big corporations. And, had written a couple books. It spoke to wide variety of individuals, impacting them. And it just, he never quite got the gold ring, but he was always reaching for it. And he's also a person who, a lot of people don't know this about him, but he actually got a tryout with the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the 60s, back before they really kind of hit their big rise. He had never played football in college or in high school, and got to training camp, spent a couple of days there, obviously got cut, but they picked up a really great punter that day and that camp. And so I played football in high school. I didn't play in college, but I sure as heck didn't make it to the Steeler camp. He's acted in movies. He moved to New York, and he, just because he was kind of forced into retirement, needed some stuff to do, so he became an extra. And he's been in tons of different movies, and met actors, and just met a lot of people. And it took me a long time to realize that being willing to extend yourself and risk failure and all that kind of stuff was the most important kind of feature. And, when my kids now, when they're doing something, I want them to fail. I tell them, go fail, because I know that they're pushing themselves beyond their normal limitations. And when my son was looking at colleges, he's a college freshman this year, he was looking at engineering for the longest time. And I'm like, oh, great. He's going to get a good job. He's going to make some money. And he had some opportunities to wrestle back East. And I thought that'd be great. And then he just kind of shifted gears. He wasn't as interested in wrestling in college. He didn't like the campuses of the schools that he had visited. And he was also kind of leaning away from engineering and wanting to major in English. And of course, I'm like, I'm not paying for a degree in English, because you're going to be broke the rest of your life. There's not going to be, you're not going to have jobs. What's your opportunities? And then I realized it's like, if I'm teaching my kids to go out and fail and really extend themselves, find their purpose and do those types of things, who am I to tell him not to do where his passion is? And he's tremendously passionate about all that. And even now, when he wrestled, he was a good wrestler. He went to state. He qualified for the Oregon State tournament 3 of the 4 years he was in high school. He got 5th his senior year. I never saw him so excited about a sport until he started doing MMA, and he'd come home at night. And I go to bed early. We talk about this on the podcast a lot. I have my bedtime, and it's usually 9:00, and he's usually getting home around that time. He's coming in all just fired up and wanting to talk about training and everything else. And I've never seen him that excited. And so, when I look at purpose in parenthood, I really look at it's less about where my life takes me. It's where my life takes the next person, is kind of how I've kind of evolved to look at purpose. And it gets me through teaching as well. I mean, I don't make a great salary teaching. And anytime I feel...
I'm going to push back on you because here's the thing. The outcome is that you make a difference in the world and that you're a great parent. But purpose comes from, what is it internally that drives you to do it? So I'm going to put some things out there for you to consider if you still like me after this. So when I think about your purpose, I'm hearing perseverance. I hear that you and your dad and your son all share this, I would say, very natural mindset to do hard things. I also hear in you that you like to learn. You were a teacher, you said, a professor. You're doing a podcast. You're teaching people about aging well and successfully, and connecting with longevity through this podcast. I also hear in you love. Love drives you. You deeply, deeply care about people in your life. And it is, I would say, love, learning, teaching, perseverance. Just from this brief conversation, I'm guessing now, but I'm giving you some things to think about, that are the components that drive you for the outcomes, the natural outcomes of how you're built, to go out there and make a difference in the world.
Okay, I like that.
So what do you think?
I think you're probably right. But it also got me thinking, it's like, well, in that same regard, why do I get so frustrated when I'm driving on the highway? You talk about, okay, one of my purposes is love, but I feel like there's so many times I just get so frustrated. But then I'm thinking, okay, it's probably because I'm getting frustrated because I want better for those people. Would that kind of be the case?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I've found with people, once you discover what are your key drivers to engage in life, otherwise known as purpose, your purpose serves also as a radar for you to, so once you know your purpose words or your equation, like what I've just thrown out at you to consider, right, as a starting point. So now you can use your purpose as a radar detector. You know that these words are what give you inner peace and alignment inside. When all of those things are working together, you, without effort, without trying, go out and make a difference. You show up to life with energy and enthusiasm, right? You're willing to confront fears and make mistakes because at that point, it's not about your ego. It's about your drive to survive through this purpose. So when you feel a sense of frustration or anger or irritation, you can also say, what is going on here? If love is in a deep, deep ability, an innate way of caring for people, as you talk about your dad and your son, and I bet your students and even your listeners, I think love is what drives that and the ability to teach and learn and then share that knowledge in a way that people can understand and consume. When you're in a traffic jam and people aren't letting other people in, that's abrasive to your sense of purpose. So I can see why that would be frustrating for you. The external environment that you're in at that time is not aligning.
I think we could end up spending hours just trying to figure me out here. This is great. And that kind of leads me to my next question is, what is a certified purpose discovery guide? Sounds like it's kind of the path you're gently taking me on right now.
Yeah. So because I help people or I guide people to build their own purpose equation using a standardized framework, I have a certification program where I can teach people how to guide others through the framework. And that framework, like I said, is applicable for people of all ages and stages of life. I use the same framework for a 19-year-old college student as I do for a 90-year-old older adult. The same framework for a frontline caregiver in senior living as I do for the CEO of that company. Purpose is universal. It's that same golden spiral pattern in all of us. So the certification process is really two things. One, I teach the theory and the research and the science behind purpose so that these purpose discovery guides can really understand what they're listening for and become purpose detectives. And then I also, once someone is certified, they get access to the workshops and the experiences and the trainings that are part of the purpose equation so that they can go out into the world and deliver purpose. Because again, my mission, very much it sounds like yours, is to not keep this equation to myself. My mission is to help as many people connect with their innate, unique purpose as possible because I have seen, as you said, with 6 degrees of separation, every human who gets connected to their purpose has exponential reach and ability to impact others positively.
So we've been talking some about how it impacts others. And we've talked a little bit about kind of how we've talked a fair amount about how much it helps the individual as well. But how does, kind of to summarize it all, how does purpose help one to age well?
At its core, knowing one's purpose is an adaptive tool. Successful aging is about knowing who you are as a being because what you're able to do and what that looks like is going to change. So when you know who you are and you know what your purpose systems and patterns are, you're able to apply motivation and joy, which results in happiness and adaptability to all the different changes that the aging process presents to us, many of which are out of our control. So humans who thrive are humans who can adapt to change, period.
Okay, so a question I ask of all my guests are, what are you doing personally to age well?
First and foremost, I stay connected with my sense of purpose because purpose is a matter of life. I know that being connected to my purpose and having this alignment internally and knowing how to calibrate my life to support this alignment is naturally going to keep me healthier. I make a concerted effort to stay socially engaged, to meet new people all the time, to have friendships with people of all ages. I volunteer for an advisory board of an organization called Perfect Pair, which was started by college students to train college students on college campuses to volunteer in senior living communities. So I connect with 19 to 24-year-olds on a regular basis through that. And then I also have friends and colleagues who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I myself am 47. So intergenerational, multi-generational connection, engagement is very important to me. And then I stay motivated by learning. Learning helps me overcome fear of making mistakes because I know that from every mistake, I'm going to gain way more learning than if I hold back to try to stay safe. And then I eat lots of fruits and vegetables and I take a walk every day. I have a dog who I absolutely love. And, I think dogs alone can add years to our life. I think there's actually studies that show that. And I try to get enough joy. Joy reduces the load on the immune system and the cardiovascular system. So it's really inside out wellness is my approach.
I have another question. I don't always ask of all of my guests, but certain guests, it tends to just kind of gravitate toward asking this question. And I get asked it a lot. So I'm going to ask it of you. If you can go back in time and change one thing in your life, what would you change?
Nothing. There's nothing I would change. I think everything that has happened has made me who I am today. And it's not necessarily that I love and accept everything about myself, but I love my purpose. It gives me joy and helps me share joy with other people. And I don't think my purpose would have evolved and expanded to what it is today if it weren't for every single thing that's happened in my life.
I would have bet my life savings that would have been your answer just from the conversation. And it's amazing how when I have a conversation with someone, I can almost predict how they're going to answer that question. And I answer it the same way. I think there's nothing I would change because if I'd go back in time and, I've made mistakes in my life. I've had, unhappy moments. I've had good moments. There are things that I wish I had maybe done differently, but I look at it as, if I change that one little thing, how is that going to change my trajectory of life and impact, who I am, where I am, my kids. I mean, I may not have the kids. I met my wife primarily because my dad moved to Virginia. We would never have met. She was in Virginia. I was in Michigan, and a buddy of mine prompted me to go on Match.com. And, I'd gone through all kind of good and bad dates through that. But she found my my little profile on there. And for whatever reason, it connected with her. And she waited and just put it off because it's like, I'm never going to meet this guy. And she finally just say, I just wanted to kind of share with you. I like your profile and too bad, we might never meet. And I said, well, you never know. My dad just moved within miles of you. And I was going down that summer. We went out like 4 nights of the 5 nights I was down there. She met my dad on our second date. And it was just like, this is it. This is where we're going. And had that not happened, had she not been looking to get out of getting a promotion that would take her to Michigan, we never would have met. And we may have met or may potentially have met in New York because she worked blocks from me when I was living in New York. And we may have crossed on the street, but it was just not the right moment to be meeting and everything. And so I really look at that answer that way, that if I change anything, it's going to change way too many things. And I appreciate your answer. And I knew that would be the answer that you would give me, because when you understand purpose, that you can't go back and change anything, because anything that happened to you is happening to evolve that purpose. And I really appreciate that answer.
Thank you. I have been there with many people because of my career when they're taking their last breaths. And evidence shows this, but I've experienced it, that when people are at the end of their days and they look back at their life, their regrets tend to be more about things that they didn't do, things that they didn't say, risks that they didn't take, way more than things that happened to them or that they tried. So there's a big difference between regret and mistakes. We all make mistakes. Things happen that we might not love, right? Tragedy occurs. But a regret is something that lingers, but it can be addressed through really facing it. So I make an effort to say the things that I want to say to the people that I care about, to admit when I make mistakes, and to be authentic as possible, and to activate my purpose to dive into life so that I don't look back and say, I wonder what if, because that's the biggest regret.
And that's probably one of the biggest definitions of aging well, is, being able to get to the end and not look back, and, or, that those last moments, or those last years of life being, something difficult. It should be something that, well, okay, I look back, I've done it well, I've made mistakes, but I've done it with purpose, and, I'm living the life I'm supposed to live, and time is up. And you can kind of let go of life a lot easier, I think, when you do that. I'm not there yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I want to look back and say, wow.
I'm closer than you are, probably.
You know what? I mean, either one of us could be gone tomorrow. But in my last moment, I want to look back and say, I loved the people I loved hard. I lived the heck out of this life. And that, that's where we get peace. And I also want to say my condolences to you for losing your dad earlier this year. That's a tough loss, and I'm sure that you're still grieving. And so to dedicate this show to him is absolutely beautiful. I'm so glad that you were able to share the impact he made.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it was sudden. I mean, we fortunately got to see him about a week and a half before that. So that, again, kind of looking back on how circumstances kind of lend themselves, it was just opportunistic that we were able to see him, and the kids got to see him again right before he passed. He was not sick. He just, we woke up one Sunday morning and my stepmom called. And, as soon as she called, my heart sunk, because I didn't think he had passed away, but I'm thinking, okay, he had another heart attack or something like that and was in the hospital. And so it really took us all by surprise. But, he lived a good life, and he did a lot. And, you kind of, when you see how people respond to the passing of someone, the quality of the life that they lived. And so thank you for your condolences. I really appreciate that. And I think I'm getting a little emotional here. I gotta get back on track here. But so where can our guests find you? How can they connect with you or a certified purpose discovery guide? Do you have a website or other social media?
Sure. Follow me on LinkedIn. Search me, Anna Hall, The Purpose Equation, on LinkedIn. And my website is thepurposeequation.com. And through my website, you can send me a message, schedule a Zoom, we can have a chat, and you can learn more about how to discover your unique purpose. Live your best life.
Well, this was a fascinating conversation. Is there anything we missed or anything else that you want to say to our listeners?
I want to say to your listeners that the one thing I know for sure is that every single human has purpose inside. Most people go through life only having a sense of what that purpose is. So I invite you to look inside, to explore your own purpose patterns and systems, and to get really specific about what it is that drives you to rise every day, because those are the tools that you can really use to live long, but not only live long, live well. And thank you so much for having me as a guest. This has been a fun conversation.
Well, thank you for your time. And again, I feel like we could keep talking. And unfortunately, I'd be recording and producing out to the world all my personal stories and things like that I guess I could share, but I'm a little hesitant to. We always tend to be a bit more reserved. But I'm sure that our listeners...
I hope that you do.
I do over time. In fact, in my teaching, I am horrible about sharing way too much information with my students. We laugh about it a lot. I go off on tangents and share stories of the past, things that I've done, shouldn't have done, all those kind of things. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more reserved here, but I'm sure our listeners are really finding this insightful. And I wish you all the best in your purpose and that you will keep aging well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.